have a nice 10-minute synopsis of what it's all about. That video was done several years ago, and we feel very fortunate to have had a professional videographer put that together for us. So at least it gives you kind of an idea of the terrain, the area where we're going, what a typical day looks like, and gives you sort of a snapshot of what's involved as being part of the program, both for students as well as volunteers. And I'm just going to walk through a bit of a PowerPoint. Let me just bring this up here. I'm going to stand over here so I can not strain my neck while I'm looking at it. And this will give you guys some opportunity to just ask questions. This is kind of supporting, again, the things that you saw in the video and walking you through step by step where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be between, we land in Santiago, and we're going to be right along this mountainous region right in here, almost exactly halfway between Puerto Plata and Santiago, way up in kind of the rural area of the mountains in the DR. Here's that mountain range right there, so we're going to be right up in here. I don't know if many of you have tried to see on Google Maps where we're going to be. The town that we're going to be located in is called Lajas, L-A-J-A-S.
Lajas de Aroa.
De Aroa, thank you, yes.
D-E-Y-A-R-O-A.
Lajas de Aroa. It might be, if you type it into Google Maps, it might be easier to type in Pedro Garcia, because that is a bigger town. It's about 4 miles away from where we are. So I know Pedro Garcia is on there, P-E-D-R-O-G-A-R-C-I-A. So this is just kind of a view of the terrain. It's absolutely beautiful. It's very lush. It is very rugged mountains. So there is some hiking involved, going up and down some fairly steep terrain. But if for some reason that you are unable to walk, we do have vehicles that can make it to most of our clinics. Once we pack up, move out on the bus, we take out from Boston. We have a layover at JFK. We will land at the airport in Santiago. The first order of business is to get through customs and to get all of our luggage, which we're going to be packing right here, into the trucks, and then truck it up the mountain. It's about an hour drive. It's only about 10 miles away, but it's an hour drive because you're going up like this on a bus. So that's generally our first order of business. This is looking at the steps from where we stay. We're going to be staying at a Catholic retreat center. It's called Fusamana, F-U-S-I-M-A-N-A. It's a really nice facility. I feel like we're very blessed to have this facility available to us. The town of Lajas is only about 2 blocks long, so this is right square in the middle of the town. And this is up on the steps looking out. So this is looking out at the veranda in the mountains in the back. And that's standing in the parking lot looking forward. So here is our cafeteria area. Here's a nice little veranda where you can kind of hang out in the afternoons and in the evenings. And then in this building is where we will set up our pharmacy. From that is where the dorms where you're going to be living. So for 2 weeks, this will be your home. It's kind of, as you can see, it's cinder block construction. It's kind of like camp when you were a kid. Each one of the rooms has bunk beds in it, and it does have a bathroom with a shower and a toilet. Most of the rooms will have like 2 sets of bunk beds. There is mosquito net there, so you do not need to bring your own. Once we arrive, we'll have just a very short little orientation and get you all into your rooms and let you set up. It will be probably by the time we get to our rooms will be kind of late at night, probably 9 o'clock or so. So just getting yourself settled and into bed is important because you're going to have a busy day the next day. We do ask for you guys to let us know who you would like to room with. So after I am finished speaking, I'll pass the sheet around. So students and volunteers, if you have a specific person that you would like to roommate with, just put your names together so that we can get you assigned to the same room. Okay? I did put this about mosquitoes since I was talking about the mosquito nets. I do have an article that is up here. I hope most of you picked it up. It's a 2-page front and back article talking about the best way to keep mosquitoes from biting. There's a lot of great information in there. And it talks about the effect of DEET, and we'll wait till Patty does her safety presentation to talk about the effect of picardin versus DEET versus natural products like oil of lemon and eucalyptus is also effective, and we have a chart to show you as well from this article. It is important to reapply your DEET, and if you have like DEET that is 10 or 15%, reapplying it more frequently is important. It should last about 3 or 4 hours when you're out in the woods or out in the jungle, so you should be using about 25% or more. If you have a higher concentration, it tends to last longer, so like 50% or 100% will last longer. But more is not necessarily better. So slathering yourself in it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any more effective. Just lightly spraying should be fine. But there's a lot of good information in that article there. And we'll talk more in depth about Zika and dengue as well as chikungunya and some of the risks associated with it, but they tend to like your feet, so spraying your feet or your shoes and socks or the lower part of your pants is a good idea. Wearing shoes and socks is a good idea, kind of light colored shirts. Spraying a collar or a hat is good. That article says that they absolutely love spandex, so don't wear like yoga pants or spandex because they tend to be drawn to that type of material. And a good prevention as well as clearing up any standing water. So outside your room, if you see like buckets or something that has standing water in it, turn it over. But we'll talk a lot more in depth about mosquitoes once we get to the PowerPoint on safety issues. So after we've had a good night's sleep, the next morning is the task of setting up our pharmacy in that one room. So today we're going to be packing up hopefully about 25 bags or so of medications and supplies and various sundry things that we're all going to be assigned a bag that you're going to be carrying with you. And once we get there, then we take out all the materials that's in the bags and we set them up on tables. The tables will be labeled like cardiac, antibiotic, respiratory, pain. And so you put the items in the respective tables. Students and volunteers, you will all be assigned a table. And you're responsible for that table. So you're responsible for inventorying everything that's on that table. And then every day when we go out to clinic, you pack your bin and make sure that it gets up on the truck and we take it out to clinic so that when we have our pharmacy set up, we have all the medications that we need. So this part takes a good 4 hours or so. We have medications that have been left over from the previous trip in January that's stored off-site that we will bring as well. So not only will we have our 25 or 30 bags, but we'll also have a lot of supplies that are coming from our storage area. That first afternoon or so, we do a lot of pill counting. We have we'll see big bottles of 1,000 pills of cardiac meds, or we'll have big bundles of vitamins that we're going to have to box into our vials and label. So there's a lot of pill counting that occurs as well. After that day of preparation, the first clinic day, we have all of our rented vehicles, we back them up, and we load them up ready to go out. Just as in the video, we were bringing out all of our items and carefully putting them in the appropriate trucks to make sure that they get out to the clinics where we're going. The first few clinics we do walk to. It's a short walk just down the road. It's maybe about a 2-mile walk or so down the road. And Patty will talk a little bit more about safety and road safety and walking along the road. This is just coming right out from where we stay in Lajas and walking down the road in town. And some of the houses along the road. As you can see, we're not in a very urban area. We're in a very rural area. And then we unload and begin to set up for our clinics. Sometimes we do have several tents. Many of the clinics will be setting up a tent, so you'll also have the first day where we're setting up our pharmacy and getting things organized. We'll have what we call a tent charla, where you'll learn how to set up our tent. So often intake is in there, or maybe the children's charla will be in a tent. And that's just a picture of one of our clinics where we're walking in. We're mostly in schools or in churches. there's a picture of the church. That's a very rural area way up in the mountains that we walk to. And that's just a picture of our intake table. We'll have our records set up, and the clients will come through the intake area. We'll find their chart. They give the chart to the person who's running our door, and they do their height and their weight, and then they wait until they are called into the clinic to be seen. And that's just a picture of them kind of waiting to come into the clinic to be seen. Some clinics are much, much busier than others. Our first several clinics are relatively small to help students get a feel for the flow and using the records and how a physical exam goes and using the pharmacy. So the first couple of days with our clinics are on the smaller side before we jump into the bigger clinics. There's certainly lots of children to be seen. We see an average of probably 400 to 600 kids per trip. And generally we'll see an average of around 1,000 or so adults as well. And that's just a picture of a student doing a physical assessment, and this is the interpreter sitting there. And just another picture of just kind of the intake area and the waiting that's involved. Some of our clinics, as I said, will be a little bit smaller. We'll have the church pews facing each other, and we're all working in pods where you have a student, your client sitting across, an interpreter, and then a nurse who's observing, and then the prescribers who are nurse practitioners or physicians. And then some clinics are just jam-packed, where it's very noisy, it's very loud. And remember, it's going to be end of June, 1st of July. It will be hot. So we want to remind everybody to please drink frequently. Have your water bottle available. This is just a picture of our pharmacy. See all these bins in the background? So this is what the students will be packing and responsible for every night, to repack your bins. When we come back from clinic, the bins go back into our pharmacy room. It's the student's job to repack everything, make sure it gets replaced and ready to go out for the next day. And then at the clinic, we have the bins set forward, and here's just the bags that you pick up, and then you come and report off to the pharmacist and get your medication and go back to the station and to do your discharge education. And that's just another picture of a pharmacy. Sometimes it's not a lot of space on a table up front. Sometimes it's all down there in the bins down in front. We do a lot of fluoride varnish. We do fluoride varnish on all of our kids, so you'll learn how to do that once you're down there. And that's just a picture of doing some of the fluoride varnishes in our kids' journal. And then lining up, ready to be physically examined. We do home visits, so there are 2 teams that you're assigned to, and then the third team is what we call our home visit team. So all the students will be rotated off into the home visit team at least once. And you spend the day going to a little bit more rural areas where it's generally elderly clients who cannot make it into the clinic. So it's a wonderful opportunity for you to get into their homes and see how they're caring for their loved ones or the elderly, particularly if they've had a stroke, how they're managing their mobility and moving them from the bed to the chair, and how they're managing their daily medications as well. So it's a great opportunity to just do a little bit more one-on-one instead of a big clinic. And it's just one of our home visit guides. As I mentioned, there's a lot of walking. Luckily, it's the summertime, so it's not too muddy. January is generally the rainy season, so it should be fairly dry, but that's just a very typical picture of kind of the paths that we're on. It's not like mountain climbing where you're doing a lot of rock climbing, but they're very, very steep. And that's just a picture from January. So you can see there's mud. I'm not going to guarantee there's no mud, because if it rains and you saw the roads, you saw that path, how muddy it is, and the mud is really clayey mud. It sticks like gumbo to your shoes and to your clothes. So I say that's a January picture. The whole path was this deep in mud. So don't bring your very best sneakers. Okay, you want to bring something that you don't mind getting muddy. There are spigots there that you can scrub and wash it, but you will not get the smell of the DR out of your tennis shoes. So if you want to donate them once you're down there, we do have a big table when we leave of items that you want to just leave there, whether it's your clothes, your tennis shoes, your flip-flops, extra snacks, whatever, extra supplies that you want to donate. So we do have a big donation table. So don't bring your $250 LL Bean tennis shoes. Unless you want to swap them back when you come back to that. There's lots of beautiful fruit stands, and where we stay is very small. Like I said, it's maybe about 2 blocks long. There's not a lot of things that you can spend your money on other than maybe a cerveza down at the little Clamato in the afternoon or the evening when we're having some downtime, and some lovely little fruit stands, and that's really about it where we stay. There's definitely no McDonald's. And this is just a typical picture of a kitchen there down in the DR where they have just kind of an open pit and fire, and that's how they cook their meals on there. And this is a picture of where we eat. The food that we have down there, the cooks are extremely good at preparing the food for us. Generally, we don't get any kind of sickness from being at Fusamanias when you go into the resort areas of people eating the restaurant food, that they tend to get more illness. So don't go down there thinking, oh, I know I'm going to lose weight, because who likes rice and beans, and I know I won't like the food. They have really delicious food, and you will grow to love it. Lots of rice and beans, but they do provide meat for us. It does tend to be a little high on the starchy side. Like some pastas and things like that. So don't feel like you're going to get diarrhea Montezuma's revenge. It tends to be the opposite, where you tend to get some constipation. So just be aware of that. If you tend to lean more towards the slower gut motility than the faster one, you might want to bring like some fiber pills or something that helps a little bit with some constipation issues. Okay. There's lots of fresh fruits. They have fresh squeezed juice every day for us for breakfast as well as for dinner. And that's just a picture of the cafeteria and eating in that evening time. And then in the evening, we have some downtime on that veranda where we sit around and play games or sing. So it's a lot of fun where just a lot of camaraderie develops, and it's a great time where we just kind of visit and hang out and talk about the day. We also go to a hospital one day, and we have an in-service for the nursing staff there. And then we have a tour of the hospital. This is in Puerto Plata. And this is just a picture of us after we give our in-service. They host us with light refreshments before we go on our trip, before we go on our tour. And that's just a picture on the roof of the hospital looking out toward the ocean. And then we have a beautiful ocean view on our way out to Cabarete for our one day of R&R at Cabarete. So we really get to play tourist one day. The very next to the last day, we do go to the beach, and Patty will talk a little bit more about beach safety, but we do rent a hotel room where you can kind of keep your stuff stored and have fun on the beach before we pack up into the airplane and head back home on July the 2nd. Okay, so that is kind of in a nutshell what a typical day would look like, and what your scenery is going to look like, who you're going to be hanging out with, and the kind of the job duties that are required. So any questions about kind of that before Patty comes up and starts talking a little bit about some of the safety issues? I'm going to start another sheet of paper around that's just for roommate sign-up sheet. This is blank right here, so if you just want to pass it back. And did the sign-up sheet make it around?
Anderson. I am a safety coordinator for this medical mission. I will be working along with leadership, and I will also have an assistant who you guys will meet when we get down to the Dominican Republic. He is a local. His name is Juan Diaz-Dominguez. He has been one of our drivers for the past 10 years now. He has also worked with our organization since he was 12 years old. He's very close with the staff where we stay. And he's very knowledgeable about the lay of the land, about culture. So we also will be working with a team of about 10 drivers. We rent a fleet of vehicles, so everywhere that we go, if it's not walking distance, everyone will be in vehicles with seat belts. We take your safety very seriously. From the second that you step into that country, we're thinking about the logistics, how we're getting to these places. We've been doing this now for, as Whitney pointed out, 21 years. So at times there are going to be rules that seem strict, but they're in place for a reason, and so we will enforce those rules. But we'll still have fun. So, oh great. I don't even know what that means.
Hit the other button. There you go.
No. There you go. Now you're on.
Now
you're on.
Okay, all right. So, as Whitney pointed out, we'll be in the northern part of the Dominican Republic in a very mountainous region. It is a developing country, so it doesn't have the facilities or the amenities that the United States would have. Power is definitely not guaranteed throughout the day and throughout the night. We call it brownouts. It won't necessarily be a blackout for a long period of time, but power comes in and out. The water is not drinkable from the faucet, so you'll want to bring maybe 2 water bottles, or just keep a water bottle in your room to brush your teeth with. So healthcare is not readily available, and the hospitals are not up to standards in the United States. However, we do have an emergency protocol at a private hospital that we take our students to and have been to. We had a student that broke her shoulder
Dislocated.
a few years back. So we do have systems in place for that, although just know that these facilities are not the same as you would expect in the United States. Blood products are not necessarily readily available. We are our own blood bank. Things that can happen, cuts, scrapes, open wounds, traveler's diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, broken bones. Where we stay, it's polished concrete on the ground, so make sure, it seems like we're all going to be using a lot of bug spray. Make sure you're off of the concrete when you're spraying yourself with bug spray, because it gets slippery and that's when people fall. So where we stay is very safe. We are up in the mountains. We're in a very small community called La Hasteyaroa. We're staying at a Catholic retreat. There is a gate that we close and lock at night. It is very well respected and revered, so we have always felt very safe there. But crime happens, and use common sense really is what we go by. So at Fusimanya, keep your valuables away from windows. You'll see these smaller windows that have they don't actually close, but they have grates that you can close. So those on some of them can be pulled open, but most of them you can lock. Just keep your stuff, your cameras, if you have a nice phone, whatever, just keep it either in your suitcase or away from those windows. You're going to use your credit card down there. Just know that it is, or your debit card, that it is possible. We've had, people's credit card numbers stolen. It happens in the United States as well, but just be aware of that. I recommend that you bring $100 to $200 in cash, but also that you have money on a debit or a credit card in case of an emergency. Yeah, we'll point out ATMs that you can go to. I will say that where we stay, it's so rural that there's not an ATM, and none of the colmados, which are the little stores, will take cards. So just know that. It is very easy, though, to change money in the Dominican Republic. So we've talked about this a little bit. Have a photocopy of your passport and keep it separate from your passport. We will also ask that you have your passport on you at all times. I have a little bag that I carry with me that's got my passport in it, and so I always have that on me. So make sure your immunizations are up to date. Wash your hands. At clinic, we're not going to have running water necessarily, so some people like to have those little attachable hand sanitizers. I keep hand sanitizer on me at all times. We also have them in the bins at clinic, so just remember to use that frequently. At Fusimanya, as Whitney pointed out, the food is prepared in a very clean way, so we are safe to eat salad, to eat fruit. However, if you buy fruit from the fruit stand and bring it up, we ask that you ask the ladies in the kitchen to prepare it for you. They will, wash it with a little bit of bleach and water, and then peel the skin off. Make sure you inform the leadership if you have any medical issues, allergies, if you've changed medication. We'll have bottled water available, so just bring, a couple of either Nalgene or whatever you like to use. I like to bring 2, and we'll wash them halfway through the trip, which we'll remind you and recommend that you do that. Foodborne illness. Again, as we pointed out, it's not as much an issue under Fusimanya. People do get sick. Sometimes it's from traveling, sometimes it's just from eating things that you're not used to. So you may want to bring Imodium or Pepto-Bismol or something like that, whatever you like. So yeah, if you might have an iron stomach in the U.S., but it's not the same germs as it is down there. As you can see from this sign, this was an actual sign at a restaurant that we ate at. And we were eating fish tacos, and then we turned around and saw that. And actually, one of the people that we were with, we both got sick from those tacos specifically.
It was fresh tasting.
At the time they tasted fresh, not so much after. So just be aware. People get sick. It happens every trip. It's not that fun, but you deal with it. So if you do get sick, if you get diarrhea, if you're throwing up, if you feel nauseous, we'll have somebody that's designated as sort of our medical personnel who will be managing any issues that you have. So you'll be checking in consistently with one person. They'll be keeping up on your symptoms and making sure that everything is normal. There we go. Protect your skin. So there is, the sun is very strong there. I basically bathe myself as much as possible in sunscreen, the highest SPF that I can. I wear a hat at all times. I recommend that, especially if you're sensitive to the sun, that you do the same, even if you're not. The sun is much stronger down there. If you forgot to bring it one day, you can always ask me. I always have it. Sometimes we have it in our admin bag at clinic, so just don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Sometimes you're out of your element and it's hard to remember all these things. And so if that happens, just ask someone and we'll help you. And make sure you reapply because it's hot, it's sweaty. Sunscreen first, then bug spray. So we'll talk more about Zika and dengue and chikungunya, which are some of these mosquito-borne illnesses. We recommend for repellent that you use 30 to 50% DEET. Now, this article that Whitney has circulated, has some other things that they say that they recommend that you can use. Personally, I use a very high concentration of DEET. I'll bring one that's 75, 80%. I even have one that's 100%. It may seem excessive. That may not be your preference, and that's okay. Make sure if you are using a high concentration DEET bug repellent that you wash your hands. I mean, it's serious stuff. It takes nail polish off. So again, there might be another bug repellent that you choose to use, but just make sure you use it and use it frequently. We talked about if you're not feeling well. And overall, just looking out for one another. We are all, out of our element and in a foreign place. So just take care of one another. And I think that if we do that as a group and check in with each other, and even if you decide to go somewhere, use the buddy system. If you want to go to a Colmado, or tell someone where you're going. Maria?
I just wanted to add, for some reason, the mosquitoes seem to like your elbows. So if you have bare arms, protect your elbows. I mean, put something on your elbows.
Swimming. You can see the beaches are really beautiful down there, and the water is really inviting and warm. But there are very strong undertows, so be careful. There will be, advisories if it's a really strong undertow. You may choose not to go in, or not to go very deep. If you're going to swim, bring somebody. Go with somebody, please. If you do get sucked into an undertow, what's advised is that you swim with it until, instead of trying to resist it, you swim with it, and you can eventually come up. But fighting it is not the right idea. Water sports, we don't allow our volunteers or participants to do that. So you may see people kite surfing and things like that. That's not for this trip, and it's not permitted. So be careful also if you choose to have a drink or two, because the drinks are very strong down there, and drinking and swimming is not always the best idea. And again, use common sense. The local merchants, and the people who are selling stuff on the beach, if you've ever been to somewhere like the Dominican Republic, they're very aggressive. They'll come up to you. They're not afraid to come up to you many times. You can decline politely, say no, gracias, whatever you need to do. But it is okay. They're going to push you. It is okay to say no repeatedly. You may have to say no repeatedly. Or you may be interested and you may want to haggle, and I highly recommend that. It's something I enjoy very much. So never use unapproved transportation. The only vehicles that participants are allowed to be in are the rented vehicles that USM and PRH procure. As I said, we'll have a fleet of about 8 vehicles this trip. We also will be renting buses at times. When you're in our vehicles, we ask that you are belted at all times. No exceptions. Road safety. As you saw, we're going to be high up in the mountains. We're not there during the rainy season, but erosion on the road happens. It's switchback mountain roads. The pavement is definitely needs a lot of work. It's very bumpy down there, and it's like in sort of in shambles at some places. So be careful when you're walking on the road. It's also very beautiful, so it's easy to get distracted or take photos, but just make sure when you're walking on the road that you're walking 2 abreast, no more than 2 people, and that you're paying attention, because you also do not have the right of way. You can't always hear when cars are approaching behind you, because they will frequently cut their engine, whether they're a motorcycle, a moped, or a car. They like to save on gas, and so you can't hear them approaching, and that can be very frightening. And they also will drive very close to you, which is why we request that you stand very close to the side of the road and no more than 2 people abreast. Wear appropriate footwear. There's there's trash, there's nails, there's rusty things in the side of the road. Sometimes there's rebar that's coming out of cement. So wear appropriate shoes. Always face traffic when walking. Now this, again, can change sometimes just because of how the switchback roads are. So you're going to have to, again, use common sense with that and be very careful if you choose to cross the road. There's a lot of stray animals there, an inordinate amount, in fact. And it can be hard not to want to pet them, to touch them. We ask that you don't do that for a couple reasons. One, for your own safety. But 2, we are medical staff. We're on a medical mission, and we are revered as such. does not look good for us to be petting stray animals when we're supposed to be attending patients or outside of clinics. There's also a very big divide between how we revere pets and animals in the United States and how it is reviewed in the Dominican Republic. We can talk more about that in depth, but please just be aware of that.
And one other thing about the animals, that they don't get vaccinated like our pets here. So none of them have had rabies shots or distemper shots or anything else like that. So if you're petting a stray animal, and believe me, they look pretty forlorn, and they're skinny, and they have mange, and they look, destitute. But if you're petting one and you happen to get bit by one, it's an immediate ticket home. You will have to come home, and you will have to have rabies vaccination.
Yeah.
So don't risk it. Just don't do it. Okay? And that's the big main reason why we can't secure your safety. So you will have to come back. I don't care how small the little bite it is, because we can't guarantee that animal doesn't have rabies.
Yeah, and animals are sadly but frequently abused down there, so they're unpredictable. So you do have to be very careful. Can't really see that. It's a picture of the road. Right past that. Riding in trucks. We've talked about this briefly. Always wear your seatbelt. They are required at all times. There are going to be roads that do seem a little scary. We go to very remote villages high up in the mountains. Our drivers, some of them have been working with us for 20 years. They are very experienced, and I trust them, and we trust them infinitely. We do check the roads as well, and we do have our drivers checking the roads so that we know that for that clinic that day it's safe. If we are at a point where something's happened, part of a road has eroded, we will turn around and it's happened that we haven't been able to get to clinics before. So we are always aware of that. If a truck gets stuck, never push it or pull it or help them. You'll see locals doing that. Stay in the vehicle, or if the driver directs you to get out of the vehicle, get out of the vehicle, but stay out of the road. So walking is not almost always an option, honestly. Some of our clinics are about 45 minutes away by vehicle, and logistically having 3 teams, a home visit, and then 2 other teams going on every day. We run a tight ship. So there are times that we are going to, if you want to walk, it's a beautiful day. There are going to be times where you can do that. Other times it won't be an option. Alcohol. So you are, if you are 21, you are allowed to have, a beer or a drink after clinic. But just be aware that we're staying at a Catholic retreat and that you're on a medical mission and a service learning program attached to the University of Southern Maine. So please act like an adult. If you do want to have a drink, we ask that you do it between 5 and 7. You have a beer, maybe 2. They do have big beers, and they're very strong, so just be careful. There are places you won't be allowed to drink. The med room is one of them. The dining room is another. There'll be some little gazebos that you can hang out in and sit in. There's some grass. We have bocce ball, so people can relax after clinic, and we certainly encourage that. But we just ask that you drink. If you choose to have a drink, you do that in moderation. There's a place we can't leave bottles around for Chikungunya. We'll ask that you rinse them and put them under the sink. We'll show you where that is when we get there. Again, beach day, having a fruity drink. There's usually a lot of rum in there, so just be aware. So emergencies that can occur, car accidents. Each village group will have a stat pack that is only used for volunteers and students. So we have medical supplies and emergency supplies that are only for our group. They will be with us at all times. We have 3 sets of these. One will go out with each team every single day. There's a backboard, and there's other emergency supplies as well. And as we talked about earlier, in the event of an emergency, we will always have a driver on call to take us, if needs be, at any hour of the night or day. to Bourne Hospital, which is a private hospital in Plata, which is actually quite nice. Malaria. This is something that we aren't as concerned about. At other times in the past, we certainly have been. There is prophylaxis for malaria. There's also something that some people choose to take it, some don't. It's really up to you. But I think if you're taking the precaution to be using DEET or be using bug spray frequently, that you will likely be okay. However, if you choose to take the vaccine or the vaccine, right? It's an oral.
Yeah, it's oral.
It's oral. Okay. So there are some side effects, crazy dreams, things like that. A lot of people have taken them. I personally have not, but that's just my choice. But if you choose to do that, make sure you do it within a timely fashion before the trip so that it can be effective. Dengue fever. I'm sure many of you have heard of dengue. It's called the broke bone disease. There are a couple different kinds of dengue. Fortunately, in the Dominican Republic, we do not experience the hemorrhagic kind of dengue, which can be fatal. People who it would really affect would be people who already, had a weakened immune system. And it is very painful. We have had members of our group, volunteers, have it. They say it really feels like every bone in your body is broken. There's no vaccine, sadly. So it's interestingly enough, these mosquitoes, the ones that carry dengue, chikungunya, and Zika are all the same mosquitoes. They're the same the Aedes mosquitoes. Yeah. So this is sort of all of the ways that we can and for chikungunya, for dengue, for Zika, there is no vaccine. It has not been developed yet. So really taking precaution to make sure that you are using bug repellent and that you're using your sleep net, your mosquito net that will be provided. Those are really your best bets. Chikungunya, we have seen cases of it where we work. It's characterized by fever, by diarrhea, sometimes a rash or joint pain. Flu-like symptoms essentially. So please be aware of that. Now the Zika, which I know all of us are concerned about. Prior to 2015, Zika virus outbreaks occurred in areas of Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. In 2015, PRHDRO issued an alert regarding the first confirmed Zika virus infections in Brazil. There have been many to follow throughout the Caribbean. We actually have a map that we can show you where it's affecting. We don't exactly know what will happen with it, but we do believe it's going to continue to spread. As far as transmission, same with dengue, same with chikungunya, the Aedes mosquito, through the bite of a mosquito. So they can other mosquitoes can become infected when they feed on a person who's already infected with the virus. They can then spread it, those mosquitoes can then spread it to other people. So what's the purple part is the countries affected by dengue, and you can see inset there, the bigger island is the Dominican Republic. So it is kind of right where it's affected. This was a link to an article that Whitney
Is the article that I just printed out.
You want to show the chart?
Yeah, I can minimize this. So this is just kind of the chart that talks about if you're concerned about using DEET and protection from a mosquito. This was a study that was done by World Health Organization as well as several other organizations on the effectiveness of DEET versus other kinds of common mosquito repellents. Like here's Repel 100, here's Cutters, here's like skin sensation, like a 7% DEET. Victoria's Secret Bombshell, sometimes perfumes can work. Avon Skin So Soft, Cutter's Natural Insect Repellent, No Insect Repellent, and Mosquito Skin Patch. And this is how the mosquitoes are repelled upon application. So, and this is the percent of mosquitoes. So as you can see, from repelled upon application, that like mosquito repellents that were higher in DEET repelled mosquitoes more quickly than the ones that were like no repellent at all. Actually, the mosquito skin patch, I think that, yeah, it was attracted them probably more than just no repellent at all. Now, what's interesting is after 4 hours, that the percent that was continued to be repelled fell a little bit with the 25%, whereas like the Cutter's Lemon Eucalyptus continued to repel them fairly well. So probably the best of them was nearly the 100% DEET was continued to work after 4 hours, and so you can kind of see from this graph the effectiveness of, certainly the most effective was the DEET, and the higher percentage DEET continued to be more effective than lower percentage DEET. But what was surprising was the Cutter's Lemon Eucalyptus Insect Repellent was pretty effective. So if you have a preference for not necessarily using a high DEET repellent, then that might be another alternative to consider. Okay? That was in this article that I copied off for you, but for some reason I couldn't cut and paste that graph. So that graph is still at the link that's on the PowerPoint.
Also with bug repellent, I have, over the years started spraying it on my net and sometimes around the foot of my bed. That's just what I do.
And that's just some of the symptoms from Zika.
So one of the things that's complicated about Zika is that only 25% of people who have it even present with any symptoms at all. And oftentimes it does look like a flu, so it's very hard to know if somebody does have it. You may experience a fever, rash, joint pain, conjunctivitis, muscle pain, and headache. The incubation period for Zika is not known, but it's likely to be a few days to a week. The illness is usually mild, with symptoms lasting for several days to a week. Zika virus usually remains in the blood of an infected person for about a week, but it can be found longer in some people. Once a person's been infected, he or she is likely to be protected from future infections. And again, this is what's known right now, and I would encourage everyone who's going on this trip to do some research on your own around Zika. Pregnancy and Zika. This is so pregnant women pass Zika virus to her fetus during pregnancy. It can cause microcephaly and other severe fetal brain defects. Pregnant woman who's already infected with Zika can pass the virus to her fetus during pregnancy or around the time of birth. This is interesting, as we will be dealing with patients, so it applies more to that than to us at this time. To date, there are no reports of infants getting Zika virus through breastfeeding. And because of the benefits of breastfeeding, mothers are encouraged to breastfeed, even in areas where Zika virus is found. Zika and sexual contact. It can be spread by a man to his sex partners. The virus is present in semen longer than in blood. It's unknown how long the virus can stay in the semen of men who have had Zika, and how long the virus can be spread through sex. So these are kind of some scary things to know, to take note of. Zika prevention. There's no vaccine, as we talked about. Trying to avoid mosquito bites. Using repellent and reapplying. CDC recommends long sleeves and pants. And make sure your mosquito net doesn't have holes in it. We'll have duct tape. You'll be bringing duct tape as well. So just make sure when you get there, lay down and look in your net, because sometimes there's little holes in them. And make sure when you get into bed at night, you tuck your net under your mattress all the way around you. Prevent sexual transmission of Zika by using condoms or not having sex. Cholera is not as much of a concern. After the earthquake in Haiti, it certainly was, even in areas of the Dominican Republic. It's not prevalent where we are. Using safe water is a sure way to avoid it. Precautions are taken at Fusimanya to ensure our food is prepared safely. When we do the dishes, we use a little bit of bleach in the water. So we are always thinking about that, and our staff is trained as well.